Hello again, wondrous wing diver Wendy's. On this quick tips video I wanted to briefly talk about the changes to the wing diver class and how that affects the weapons you'll choose going into Inferno missions. Say for example you're playing Ranger or the other two classes. If you're playing on Inferno, you're going to want to stay towards the highest level weapons you can take into a mission. So you'll stick, like for a rocket launch, you're going to want to stay in the 80s or 70s to compete for for a weapon that'll actually do enough damage. However, the wing diver class has changed this time around in that she has a lot of weapons that are charge weapons, which that means is you, instead of pulling the trigger to fire the weapon, you will hold the trigger down and charge the weapon up, which will take energy out of your energy core, and then you release the weapon to fire. So that gives her a lot more variety of weapons, and it's actually beneficial to look at lower level weapons when you're playing on Inferno now. Some examples of this is, like in the first column here, she has a bunch of lances. Her lances, the one-shot lances, or there's some that are more than one, but like these large lances right here are very, very strong weapons, and they don't have too much of energy cost, but they do have that energy cost can add up. Like say for example this best one, which I use almost all the time, level 92, does 40,000 damage, and it costs 112 energy to charge it up. So sometimes in a mission you're not going to need 40,000 damage to fight an enemy. Like that's going to be for if you're taking out cosmonauts or anchors or something like that. But there are other lances that are further down that are cheaper in cost that do a lot of damage already. Like this one does 19,000 damage and only costs 71 energy. And there's also one that's level 49 here that does 13,000 damage and only 33 energy. So sometimes if you need to be more of a mobile class, you find yourself getting low on energy, sometimes it's a good idea to look further down her list for weapons that cost less energy but still do enough damage. Like the reason this is balanced is because, say you're playing on hard, if you're playing on hard, this lance is going to take just as much energy out of your energy core on hard as this lance will take on Inferno. So it kind of balances out that way. However, if you want to play on Inferno and have less energy cost, then it might be wise to take this level 49 lance, which costs 1/3 the energy and still has enough damage to do to kill most enemies. 13,000 damage is pretty good. I mean, that is at closest range, but chances are you're still going to be doing 7 or 8k, which is going to shoot through enemies, so this can be a very good weapon. You can also look a little bit further down, but there's not too many more options on Inferno you're going to want to take as far as the lances go. There is a one-shot lance somewhere here. Let me look for this one. It does 12,000 damage, I think it is. Where is it at? It's this one right here, level 81, but that is kind of a high-level lance for Inferno. I thought there was one that was lower. Maybe I'm thinking of another weapon. But anyway, let's also talk about the rapiers in this as well. Like the changes to the rapier, actually, I actually like the change to the rapier. What they did this time around was they made the normal rapier where you just have a magazine and you shoot it and reload. They made it really short range, so 30 meters. So that means it's more of like a shotgun, very close range shotgun, which does very high damage. And then the rapier thrust, they changed to where you have to charge that weapon up now, and it costs more energy. So therefore you can't just constantly fire the rapier thrust all the time, but it also has a 96 meter range. But something I noticed on Inferno is level 95 rapier thrust, you'll find yourself getting low on energy a lot when you use this weapon because you have to charge up 200 energy. Well, maybe you don't need 60,000 damage a second. So if you're not fighting anchors, like I said, or cosmonauts, it might be wise to actually take the lower level rapier thrust, and you could still use them and still be very mobile. Like for example, this level 64, this thing does 16,000 damage per second, and it only costs 100 energy to charge up. And the level 56 here, this thing does 12.6k damage per second, and it only costs, I think it will cost less than 114. Mine is not maxed out, but it costs less energy than this one as well, and it still does about 12k damage per second. So if you're just fighting, ants or spiders, it might actually be wise to take, the 64 or the 56 into battle, and you won't find yourself low on energy as much, and it still does enough damage. So just things like that, like you have to get used to looking further down the column for Wing Diver class. There's not too many examples where it'd be wise to take a lower level laser. There is, as far as the Thunderbow and Idun column, the Idun costs very cheap, so I don't think it's probably worthwhile to take a lower level Idun for energy cost, because the best one costs, that's the DLC one. The best one costs about 150 to charge up, which isn't too much because it's a magazine weapon, so you're probably not going to need to take a lower level Idun. But the Thunderbow is a possibility. Her best Thunderbow costs 84 energy, and it does 3,200 damage per shot. Whereas you can take a lower level one, which is, let's see, I think it's level 50. Yeah, the level 51. This thing does 1/3, it costs 1/3 the energy, and it does 1/2 the damage. So this thing does about 1,500 damage per shot. Now, I was testing it out online a little bit on Inferno online, and it's definitely not the strongest weapon, but I think being able to shoot it twice as often and having not having as much energy issues, you can actually find yourself probably taking this particular Thunderbow on Inferno, and it's still completable on certain missions. And you can fly around more and not have to worry about energy. There's also one that is a one-shot that's 28 energy. This thing does about 1,200 damage per shot. This is more for like range damage, but I'm not saying this is probably the best option necessarily to take, but it is a possibility to use. Definitely this level 50 I find is still probably useful on Inferno if you want to be more mobile and not have to worry about energy as often. Probably the most notable one to take lower level weapons is in this fourth column here, the plasma shotgun. She has a new shotgun where you charge up a shot and it does a huge amount of damage with explosive damage in addition to that. This thing does 100 projectiles and it does 12,600 damage per shot, but it costs 137 energy. This weapon now is probably her best underground stun lock weapon. It can still be used above ground too, of course, but if you want to just, like before in the past games, you would take 2 Iduns and you would shoot one, and then while that one's reloading, you would switch to the other one and shoot the other one to kind of like stun lock enemies into a tight cavern underground so they never could get through. This is her new weapon to stun lock enemies underground. And sometimes if you're trying to use this as constant output of damage, you'll find yourself overheating. So you can actually take the lower level plasma shotguns and they're still very, very strong. Like for example, this one right here just does 8,000 damage a shot, and it costs 81 energy instead of the 137. So if you find yourself running low on energy and you want to stun lock enemies underground or just constantly shoot a shotgun, it might be better to take this level 59. There's also a lower level one as well, level 37 I think it is. Yeah, this thing does 4,000 damage and only has 30 energy cost. So the point is, in this column, it might be wiser to take a lower level plasma shotgun, probably the level 59, if you're finding yourself low on energy and you want to use a shotgun, non-stop without worrying about energy. You can also use snipers as well. Snipers also have a good example of this. The level 36 Gungnir, this thing does 15,000 damage a shot, and that's pretty good for level 36. And like I said, the reason they can get away with this is because it would overheat you to try and charge this weapon on hard or whatever lower difficulty you're taking it on. Whereas in Inferno, you can charge this up without overheating and therefore have a 15,000 damage shot sniper, which is very nice. Let's see what else. Also, the monster is another example. Her monster, she has a level 55 version and she has a level 80 version. Sometimes it might be better to actually take the level 55 because it has less energy cost, only 321, and it still does 16,000 damage per shot versus the 24,000 damage the other one does. And also the level 55 costs 124 less energy per shot as well. So it can be sometimes wise to take the lower level monster as well. And then the last, well, actually, there's 2 more I want to cover. The plasma launchers also is a good example. Of course, the most famous, if you've watched my channel before, the level 15. This thing does 7,700 damage with a 30-meter blast for level 15, which is absolutely ridiculous. Of course, this would overheat you if you're taking it on normal, but if you're playing on Inferno, 197 energy over 4 seconds is nothing. So you can use this thing an awful lot, and it is a very, very good plasma launcher for Wing Diver. Let's see what else. Of course, the level 55 is a very good plasma launcher, even though it's not max level. It's the one that does 22,000 damage, so a nice big shot. But most people are going to know about the 55 when you're playing on Inferno. And then last of all, the missile launcher column. There's actually a few notable things. It may not be always good to use, but there's a possible strategies to use. Like, say for example, the Ghost Chaser. The Ghost Chaser is level 68. This thing is tough to use because it shoots the ground, so you have to kind of fly with it. Otherwise, it'll shoot your feet and it'll knock you down. But the benefit of the explosive damage is that it knocks tadpoles out of the air and it stuns them, knocks them to the ground, which can be very good. However, it's hard to use because it costs a lot of energy and it can hit your feet. However, the level 21 Ghost Chaser does not hit your feet as badly. It's easier to actually stand on the ground and shoot this thing. And this can be used, it's not very strong damage, but it can be used to knock tadpoles out of the air. So that's like an exception where you may use this once in a while on Inferno difficulty. And also the Geist level 36 is also a possibility on certain missions. If you just need to stun enemies like spiders, for example, you need to knock them down because there's so many spiders, you might want to take the level 36 Geist because it costs half the energy of the best Geist, which is level 63. The Geist this time around does cost a lot less energy, so you can actually fly with this weapon now. But if you are still finding yourself, low on energy and you want to just knock spiders down or kill greens or something with low health, then it may actually be a good idea to take the level 36. It also can be a stun locker for colonists and cosmonauts because they constantly jump back and try and get away from the blast. And if you find yourself running low on energy, you could always maybe take the 36. But just something interesting for the Wing Diver class now, where it's actually a good idea to think about lower level weapons for her, since she has such a unique charge style of weapons. So I just wanted to share it with you guys because, like, for me personally, it took a while to get used to the idea of looking further down the list on Inferno. So just something to think about, and something interesting I thought would be to share with you. So that'll be all for this one. Once again, thanks a lot for watching, and remember, EDF doesn't leave a man behind, ever. And if you'd like to help more people find the channel, please consider liking and subscribing, as it does make a big difference. Thanks a lot.